The Vethrani came without warning. Their ships emerged from fold space like shadows given form, their hulls darker than the void itself. Within 6 standard months, they had conquered 47 human colony worlds. They called it the Great Harvest. Humanity called it the beginning of rage. Commander Marcus Chun stood on the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Retribution, watching the tactical display light up with enemy positions around the planet Meridian Prime. This had been the first world to fall. The Vethrani had made it their regional command center, a symbol of their dominion over human space. Today, it would become something else entirely. A message. The Vethrani were ancient beings. Their civilization stretched back 50,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of species across the galaxy, absorbing them into their collective empire or simply erasing them from existence. They viewed younger races as resources to be harvested, cattle to be controlled. When they discovered humanity, they expected another easy conquest. They had made a terrible miscalculation. Admiral Sarah Volkov's voice crackled through the fleet-wide communication channel. She was aboard the flagship Unconquered, leading the Liberation Armada from the front. Her words were simple and direct. All ships, this is Admiral Volkov. Today we take back what belongs to humanity. Today we remind the galaxy why our ancestors crossed the void and built an empire among the stars. Execute Operation Sunrise. 300 warships moved as one. The Imperial fleet had assembled in secret over 18 months, hidden in the dark spaces between stars where no sensor could reach. They had gathered intelligence, analyzed enemy tactics, and planned this moment down to the smallest detail. The Vethrani believed they had broken humanity's military capacity. They were about to learn the truth. Marcus watched as the first wave of fighters launched from the carrier ships. Thousands of small craft spread across the darkness like angry fireflies, their engines burning bright against the black canvas of space. The Vethrani defense platforms detected them immediately and opened fire. Brilliant beams of energy cut through the void, vaporizing dozens of fighters in seconds. But for every ship that fell, 10 more took its place. On the surface of Meridian Prime, 7 million humans lived under occupation. The Vethrani had installed neural compliance devices in every citizen, machines that delivered crippling pain at the slightest sign of resistance. They had destroyed the cities and forced the population into work camps where they extracted rare minerals from the planet's crust. Families had been separated. Children had been taken to conditioning facilities. For 3 years, the people of Meridian Prime had suffered in silence, holding on to one desperate hope, that the Empire would come for them. Lieutenant Commander Elena Torres led the ground assault team aboard the dropship Hammer 6. She was a native of Meridian Prime, born in the capital city of New Valencia before the occupation. Her parents had died in the initial bombardment. Her younger brother had disappeared into a conditioning facility and was presumed dead. Elena had escaped on one of the last evacuation shuttles, carrying nothing but her uniform and an unbreakable promise to return. The dropships descended through the atmosphere like meteors, their heat shields glowing orange against the friction. Anti-aircraft fire rose to meet them, green bolts of plasma that turned the sky into a deadly light show. Elena watched the ship ahead of her take a direct hit, the hull rupturing and spilling soldiers into the burning air. She tightened her grip on her rifle and said a silent prayer for her fallen comrades. Above the planet, the space battle had reached its peak intensity. The Vethrani command ship, a massive vessel called the Dominion's Will, directed the defense with cold precision. Its commander, Fleet Master Corvus, had conquered 12 species in his long career. He studied the human attack patterns and found them chaotic, inefficient, almost primitive compared to Vethrani military doctrine. He could not understand why his forces were losing. The answer lay in something the Vethrani could never comprehend: human adaptability, human creativity, human rage. The Imperial fleet did not follow predictable patterns. because each captain was empowered to act on their own initiative. They improvised, they sacrificed, they took risks that no rational species would consider. A destroyer captain rammed his damaged ship directly into a Vethrani cruiser, destroying both vessels but opening a gap in the enemy formation. A wing of bombers flew through the explosion, using the debris as cover to reach their target. Marcus ordered the Retribution forward, directly into the enemy formation. His tactical officer protested that this violated every principle of void warfare. Marcus simply smiled and said that the Vethrani were counting on humanity to be rational. The dreadnought's massive guns spoke in thunderous chorus, each shot tearing through enemy shields with brutal efficiency. Human weapons technology had advanced dramatically during the occupation, driven by necessity and a burning desire for vengeance. On the surface, Elena's team hit the ground running. They had landed 3 kilometers from the primary slave camp, where 15,000 humans were held in conditions that defied description. The Vethrani guards were tall, pale creatures with multiple limbs and cold, calculating eyes. They wore armor that could shrug off standard weapons fire, and they moved with terrifying speed. But Elena's team carried weapons designed specifically to defeat them. 18 months of research had produced kinetic accelerators that could punch through Vethrani armor like paper. The first guard fell before he even knew the humans had arrived. The second managed to raise his weapon before 3 shots took him in the chest. Elena moved through the compound like a ghost of vengeance, her training and fury combining into something almost superhuman. She remembered the faces of her parents. She remembered her brother's laughter. She remembered everything, and she made the Vethrani remember it too. Across Meridian Prime, similar scenes played out. Drop teams struck with surgical precision, targeting communications hubs, power stations, and garrison bases. The neural compliance network was disabled within the first hour, freeing millions from the constant threat of pain. Citizens who had lived in fear suddenly found themselves able to fight back. Many of them did, using improvised weapons and decades of suppressed anger. Admiral Volkov watched the battle unfold from her command center. The tactical display showed green icons pushing back red ones across the entire front. The Vethrani were in full retreat, their carefully constructed defensive network crumbling under the relentless human assault. She allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before returning her attention to the bigger picture. Meridian Prime was just the beginning. 46 worlds still needed liberation. Fleet Master Corvith experienced something his species rarely felt: fear. The humans were not supposed to be capable of this. Intelligence reports had assured him that humanity's military was broken, their morale destroyed, their will to fight extinguished. Yet here they were, tearing his fleet apart with savage determination. He ordered a retreat, hoping to preserve what remained of his forces for the defense of other occupied worlds. He would never reach them. The Retribution caught the Dominion's will attempting to escape. Marcus ordered all 4 batteries to concentrate fire on the enemy flagship's engines. The shots landed perfectly, crippling the massive ship and leaving it drifting helplessly in the void. Marcus felt no satisfaction as he watched the Vethrani command ship begin to break apart. This was not about satisfaction. This was about justice. Elena reached the camp's central facility, where the conditioning equipment was housed. Inside, she found 300 children, ranging in age from 5 to 12, strapped into machines designed to erase their identities and turn them into compliant servants. Many of them had been there for years. Many of them no longer remembered their names or their families. Elena began disconnecting them, one by one, while her team secured the perimeter. A young boy looked up at her with confused eyes and asked if she was his mother. Elena told him no, but promised that they would find his mother together. The liberation of Meridian Prime took 16 hours. By the end, the Vethrani garrison had been completely destroyed, and the human population was free for the first time in 3 years. Medical teams landed to treat the sick and wounded. Psychologists arrived to begin the long process of helping people recover from trauma that would take generations to heal. Engineers started work on rebuilding the infrastructure that the occupiers had destroyed. But the fleet did not rest. Admiral Volkov ordered immediate preparation for the next target, then the next, then the next. For 112 days, the Imperial fleet moved from world to world, liberating each one with the same relentless determination. The Vethrani tried to mount defenses, but they were always too slow, always too surprised by humanity's speed and ferocity. Their 50,000-year empire had never faced an enemy like this. Word spread through the galaxy. Other occupied species watched in amazement as humanity reclaimed its stolen worlds. Some began to hope that their own liberation might be possible. Others began to fear that the humans would not stop at their own borders. Both groups were partially correct. The final battle took place above the Vethrani homeworld itself. The aliens had pulled back every ship they had, creating a defensive barrier that should have been impenetrable. Admiral Volkov looked at the enemy formation and saw fear made manifest in military formation. She addressed her fleet one final time. She told them that they had come not to conquer, but to ensure that no species would ever consider occupying human worlds again. She told them that mercy was a luxury they could afford now that victory was certain. She told them to be better than their enemy. The battle lasted 4 days. When it ended, the Vethrani fleet was destroyed, and their leadership had surrendered unconditionally. The occupation of human space was officially over. Every world had been liberated, every citizen freed. The cost had been tremendous. 200,000 human soldiers had died in the campaign. Countless civilians had perished during the occupation itself. The scars would last for centuries. Marcus Chen stood on the surface of Meridian Prime 6 months after Liberation Day. He had been promoted to Admiral, a rank he never wanted but accepted out of duty. Around him, the city of New Valencia was being rebuilt, its streets filled with people who walked freely for the first time in years. Children played in parks where Vethrani execution grounds had once stood. Life was returning to a world that had known only death for so long. Elena Torres found her brother. He had survived the conditioning facility, though the process had stolen most of his memories. He did not recognize her when they first met. But over time, with patience and love, some of his memories returned. He remembered her laugh. He remembered the games they used to play. He remembered that he was loved. The galaxy learned a lesson that day. Humanity could be conquered. Their worlds could be occupied. Their people could be enslaved and tortured and broken. But somewhere in the darkness, the survivors would be planning. Somewhere in the void, a fleet would be gathering. And one day, without warning, liberation would come. It always came. Because humans never forgot, never forgave, and never stopped fighting for their own. The Vethrani Empire declined rapidly after their defeat. Other species they had once controlled rose up against them, inspired by humanity's example. Within a century, their great civilization had fragmented into 100 warring factions, none of which posed any threat to their neighbors. They became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happened to those who underestimated the younger races. And humanity? They rebuilt. They grew stronger. They established alliances with other species who valued freedom and dignity. They created a new order in their region of the galaxy, one based on cooperation rather than conquest. But they also maintained the largest military fleet in known space, and they trained each new generation to remember the occupation and the liberation that followed. Never again, they swore. Never again would human worlds fall to foreign invaders. And if they ever did, the occupiers would learn what their predecessors had learned, that every world would be taken back, every single one.